I have to confess that I spent a whole segment of my adult life avoiding encounters with people. I was a physician in the only pediatric practice in Lee County, North Carolina, with 2 very young children of my own. I loved my patients, but after scheduled encounters all day, I longed for quiet. So Dave and I developed some guidelines that, looking back, seem pretty desperate. Number 1, avoid the church nursery. That way I didn't get caught up in discussions about diaper rash or child development while my family waited impatiently. Number 2, have 2 phone lines. This was back before most people had call waiting or cell phones or caller ID. One of our phone numbers was listed. The other was known by 4 friends in town, our family, and out-of-town friends. When the second phone rang, I knew it wasn't going to be work. Number 3, shop at off hours. That's self-explanatory. And number 4, as a pediatrician, never ever eat at a restaurant on Kids Eat Free night. I'm kind of embarrassed now at the extremes to which I went to avoid encounters with patients. But I understand better now why I did it. I needed times and places where I could be seen and known as something more than just a physician, where I could be a mother, wife, daughter, sister, friend, but most of all, a unique individual and child of God. Maybe it wasn't really privacy that I wanted. Maybe I actually wanted to be known more fully in my completeness. And that leads me to today's gospel reading. The Gospel of John is full of personal encounters. Nicodemus comes to Jesus in the middle of the night. There's a moment when the crowd walks away and Jesus and the woman caught in adultery are the only 2 left. There's the passage where Mary anoints Jesus' feet and where Jesus washes the disciples' feet. These encounters are marked by a deep familiarity in which Jesus truly sees the person or the people in front of him. And we have an example of it again in today's gospel reading, in which we hear about the famous meeting of Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well. "Give me a drink of water," Jesus says, and the woman replies with a hint of a challenge. "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" The revelation of Jesus' identity begins right away. If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, "Give me a drink," you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Now there's a double entendre here. Living water could refer to fresh flowing water like in a stream or a spring, or it could mean life-giving water. Just like when he spoke to Nicodemus about being born again, Jesus is using a metaphor to open up space for the new reality that's coming into the world through Jesus. The conversation continues, and ultimately the woman finds that Jesus is none other than the Messiah himself. According to the Gospel of John, this woman is the first person to whom Jesus explicitly reveals himself. Just as Mary Magdalene will be the first one to whom the risen Christ reveals himself in the Gospel of John. But in this midst of this revelation at the well, the woman herself is also revealed. Jesus tells her, "Go call your husband." When she replies that she has no husband, her marital history is laid out in its entirety. "You have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." Too often, the church has made this Samaritan woman into an icon of immorality. But we don't know from this passage if her 5 husbands died tragically in succession, or if she's been abandoned or divorced. She may have had Levirate marriages, where a widow who has no children is taken in by her husband's brother so that she may produce an heir. Some people have also speculated that no respectable woman would come to the well in the heat of the day. But frankly, maybe that's the only time she had, or it's the least busy time to draw water. The point is that we tend to supply our own narratives about this Samaritan woman. But let's look at what is actually in the text. When Jesus begins to reveal himself, this woman initiates a theological conversation with Jesus. Where are we supposed to worship? On Mount Gerizim, as the Samaritans believe, or in Jerusalem, as the Jews believe? She's interested in the theology here. When she tells the villagers about Jesus, people listen to her. She's someone that people listen to. And Jesus never says to her, "Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again," as he does to the woman caught in adultery. The truth is that we often wrap this Samaritan woman in stories of our own choosing, instead of seeing her as the text actually portrays her, instead of seeing her how she truly is, which is how Jesus sees her. When the woman leaves her encounter with Jesus, she tells the people that she meets one thing: "Come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done." What this Samaritan woman experienced at the well was not primarily judgment. She experienced the grace of being known. It's this grace that changes the woman. The woman leaves the well that day with a new job, that of evangelist, inviting others to come and have the same personal encounter that she's had with Jesus. And we can imagine that her life is never the same. The grace of being known by God changes us too. And that's something that's especially important to remember in the season of Lent, the part of the church year when we're called to a period of prayer, self-examination, and repentance. Self-examination requires a willingness to be vulnerable and honest, to see ourselves with all of our gifts and all of our faults. And we're only able to actually be that honest and to do that in light of the fact that God's love for us always precedes any worthiness on our part. We can be painfully honest because we know that God's love for us always precedes any worthiness on our part. Knowing ourselves as known and loved is the only way that we can have the courage to see ourselves as we truly are. I think our own experience of being simultaneously known and loved changes not only the way that we see ourselves, but also the way that we see others. We can't have the same kind of intimacy with everyone that we have with our family, our friends, our church family. Part of allowing people to be who they are means honoring the distance between us too. But we can resolve to see the people we meet in our day-to-day lives as they really are. We can engage in what Barbara Brown Taylor calls the practice of encountering others. She describes it this way in her book, An Altar in the World. She writes, "The practice of encountering others is the practice of coming face to face with another human being and at least entertaining the possibility that this is one of the faces of God. This spiritual practice requires no special setting, no personal trainer, no expensive equipment. It can be done anywhere by anyone who resolves to do it. A good way to warm up," she writes, "is to focus on one of the human beings who usually sneak right past you because they're performing some mundane service, such as taking your order or handing you change. The next time you go to the grocery store, try engaging the cashier. You do not have to invite her home for lunch or anything, but take a look at her face while she's trying to find arugula on her laminated list of produce. Here is someone who exists even when she is not ringing up your groceries, as hard as that may be for you to imagine. She is someone's daughter, maybe someone's mother as well. She has a home she returns to when she hangs up her apron here, a kitchen that smells of last night's supper, a bed where she occasionally lies awake at night, wrestling with her own demons and angels. Do not go too far with this, Taylor says, or you risk turning her into a character in your own novel, which is part of her problem already. It is enough for you to acknowledge her when she hands you your change. You saved $11.06 by shopping at Winn-Dixie today, she says, looking right at you. All that is required of you is to look back. Just meet her eyes for a moment when you say thanks. Sometimes that is all another person needs to know, that she's been seen. Not the cashier, but the person. But even if she does not seem to notice the encounter has occurred, you noticed, and because you did, neither of you will ever be quite the same again. I think a huge part of the grace that people felt around Jesus was the grace of being known for who they truly were. And it's a grace that we too can share with those who are close to us. But through the spiritual practice of encountering others, we can also share this grace even with those who we meet casually. We can at least see the person in front of us, not as someone we can use, change, fix, help, save, enroll, convince, or control, but as a unique individual, a child of God, the face of the resurrected Christ. See, the same grace that allows us to do the inner work of self-examination, the grace of being known and loved as we are, also turns us outward and invites us to see others as they are. Like the great commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, maybe true grace is always bi-directional like that.